Hi, welcome to our session, Making Connections Using APR Data to Tell a Story. My name is Heather Anderson, and I serve as the Director of IDA Data Oversight and Support for the Tennessee Department of Education. Today, I will be co-presenting with Catherine Bledsoe, the Department's Manager of Special Education Post-Secondary Transition. For each slide in this presentation, you may click the megaphone icon located in the bottom corner of each slide to access an audio recording. Our agenda today includes a discussion of the legal requirements and the definitions of the Annual Performance Report, or APR, that is required by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, known as IDEA. We will be sharing how we can connect the APR indicators to ensure that we are providing the most comprehensive support that we can for our students with disabilities. Later, Catherine will be sharing the importance of starting early to ensure that post-secondary success, and we will cover the importance of prioritizing APR data in programmatic and planning decisions. As we begin our discussion, let's talk about the APR legal requirements. So we know that this work brings a diverse audience filled with special education supervisors, those leadership and data teams, as well as the case managers, teachers, and related service providers. I want to make sure that we explain what the APR is and why it is so important to everyone on the teams. Some of you at the teacher or the provider level may not be too familiar with the APR. So let's dig into these questions. What is the APR and why does it matter? And how can we use the APR as a tool for transparency, reflection, and growth? The IDA requires states to develop a state performance plan, or an SPP, that evaluates how the state is implementing the requirements and the purposes of the IDEA. The SPP describes how the state will improve the implementation of special education, and it contains rigorous targets for 18 compliance-based or results-based indicators of performance. Targets for the results-based indicators are collaboratively set by the department and various stakeholder groups, including the Governor's Advisory Council for the Education of Students with Disabilities. The results-based targets do increase each year. The targets for the compliance-based indicators are set by the federal government at 100% and cannot be adjusted in any way. Every year on February 1st, states are required to submit a statewide annual performance report, APR, to the Office of Special Education Programs, OSEP, that details progress towards meeting the SPP targets according to the indicators. So what is the APR and what is required? As part of the IDA requirements for general supervision, states are required to monitor the implementation of IDA in each LEA. As you can see here for the monitoring activities, they must focus on improving educational results and functional outcomes for all children with disabilities and ensure that public agencies meet the program requirements under Part B of the IDA. Tennessee monitors LEA performance on APR indicators 1 through 14. LEAs earn points for each indicator based on meeting the target and are demonstrating that year-to-year improvement. And also total weighted points that are earned are divided by the total possible weighted points to determine each LEA's overall annual determination. Monitoring begins and ends with OSEP though. So just as the state monitors LEAs, OSEP monitors the states. And for those of you who will participate with FPO in on-site monitoring visits this fall, we are with you. Tennessee is currently engaged in OSEP monitoring events, and later in the fall, OSEP will be on site in Nashville to assess our state's implementation of IDA requirements. At the end of that process, we as a state will also receive an overall determination with areas for improvement. Just as the state is issued an annual determination, each LEA is issued an APR local determination matrix each May. The matrix provides an overall determination and it measures the LEA's performance for each indicator. Your LEA's APR data matrix describes the health of your individual special education system. The APR data tells your story as the data is reflective of all of the programming decisions and the implementation of your policies and procedures. And we know that those decisions and priorities are very critical in shaping and determining the success of every student in your care. So how can we use our APR data to drive the programming that will lead us to increased APR performance and, most importantly, to improved outcomes for our students? Think of your APR data as a progress monitoring tool and know that we're all in this together. The state's APR is an aggregate of all of the local determination data across the state. So it is our data. So how can we leverage our APR data to improve outcomes for our students? We must first understand the indicators and connect them to what really matters, our students. Here's a list of the SPP APR indicators. You might think that the indicators are followed in a chronological order. However, the indicators are not numbered or followed in a chronological order, and they seem random. The list begins with graduation and dropout, and it moves to assessment and through educational environments, and then preschool transition. It may seem out of order and very challenging for people to conceptualize. Because of this, it might help to reorder the indicators in a way that makes more sense, in a timeline or a narrative of a child's progression through their entire educational journey. But of course, this isn't perfect, and some indicators can be challenging to place within a timeline. There isn't necessarily an age where indicators 9 and 10, or 8 or 4 fit in a simplified story. However, simplifying the content, grounding the information, and making the data tell a story can help us connect better to the children that the data actually represent in your LEA. We should always be thinking with the end in mind, and we know that the foundation for post-secondary success is laid very early in a student's educational journey. Today and every day, let's consider the APR as a journey or a relatable story. The APR indicators do indeed tell the story of the academic experience of children with disabilities and how the state and LEAs serve our most vulnerable population. One way to explain the APR is to tell the story from the perspective of a child, from the moment that they enter special education, their journey all along the way, and as they move into all that comes after they leave school. Today we present the APR as a story of not the report, but of a child. Meet Miguel. Meet Miguel. He's been receiving early intervention services from Part C since he was 6 months old. In Tennessee, Part C services are provided by the department's sister agency, the Tennessee Early Intervention System, known as TEIS. At age 2.5, Miguel was referred by Part C to Part B, where he had an evaluation completed for special education and related services within the required time frame. This is measured by indicator 11. He was determined eligible for special education, and his IEP team ensured that his IEP was completed and implemented by his 3rd birthday, creating a seamless transition to preschool Part B services, LEA services. This is measured by indicator 12. Both indicators 11 and 12 are compliance indicators with a 100% compliance target, which means that OSEP expects all states to ensure that LEAs follow procedures and meet timelines for 100% of children. As we think of Miguel's educational journey, his first flag is planted with indicators 11 and 12. During Miguel's IEP meeting, his team looked at all the data and determined his least restrictive environment, or LRE, to be the regular early childhood program at his local elementary school, where he received integrated special education services with a co-teaching model. Because he was in a regular early childhood program, Miguel was able to access services and educational opportunities with his peers, with and without disabilities, rather than being pulled out to a separate classroom with only students with disabilities. And we know that early placement decisions and interventions significantly impact every student's success later in life. Indicators 1, 2, 13, and 14 begin here, within the earliest placements, the programming, and the IEP team decisions. Miguel's success was due to early access to his gen ed peers and that robust instruction and interventions that he received in those settings. When Miguel entered preschool, he was assessed to determine whether he had met those age-level expectations for outcomes that were related to social and emotional skills, use of knowledge and skills, and then use of appropriate behaviors to meet needs. When Miguel entered preschool, his assessment showed that he was below age-level expectations. However, from the services and supports that he received throughout preschool, based on the results of his exiting assessment, he substantially increased his rate of growth. We can plant 2 more flags along Miguel's path as he moved through his early interventions with a placement with his gen ed peers that helped him learn the core content of his preschool program, which will set him up for success when transitioning to school-age programs. Miguel is very excited as he transitions to kindergarten. And similar to his preschool placement, Miguel was able to access those high-quality services and educational opportunities with his gen ed peers, rather than being siloed in a separate classroom with only students with disabilities. Research strongly supports that inclusion is beneficial for all students, those with IEPs and those without. And with indicator 5, we drop another flag into Miguel's journey. Indicator 8 focuses on whether parents are involved in educational decisions as part of the IEP team and to what extent they contributed meaningfully to improving services and results for their child. The image on the slide is a screenshot of a conversation between Miguel's teacher and his parents. It models how a teacher initiated the conversation with both parents and how both parents responded with meaningful comments that demonstrate home engagement and awareness of classroom and IEP expectations. Most importantly, his parents were active members of his IEP team meetings where they felt heard, respected, and informed of his needs. Robust conversations and collaboration should always be the foundation of every IEP team meeting. The LEA established very early on that parent involvement and good communication was the key to Miguel's success, and we drop another flag along his educational journey. Indicator 9, disproportionate representation, measures the number of children identified as receiving special education or related services by race or ethnicity. Miguel began to move through the grade bands. He had robust reevaluations completed throughout his school journey due to strong evaluation practices in his LEA, which ensured there was no disproportionate representation or inappropriate identification of children like Miguel. Indicators 9 and 10 are monitored for K through 12. If an LEA is found to have disproportionate representation, the state is required to review the policies, procedures, and practices of any LEA that has significant rates higher than the state average. Dr. April Ebinger specifically works with LEAs in these areas. Indicator 10 is disproportionate representation in specific disability categories. Indicator 10 looks at the number of children identified as receiving special education or related services by race or ethnicity in the following specific disability categories: intellectual disability, specific learning disabilities, emotional disability, speech or language impairments, other health impairments, and autism. Miguel's LEA did not have disproportionate representation. If it did, again, the state would review the LEA's policies, procedures, and practices. Having strong identification policies, practices, and procedures that ensure children are not being inappropriately identified with a disability based on race or ethnicity and among these disability categories means that Miguel is appropriately identified and reevaluated, and that there aren't internal issues that led to the identification predicated on race or ethnicity. With indicators 9 and 10, we're able to plant another flag along Miguel's journey. Indicator 4A, suspension, expulsion. There were times when Miguel was removed from his classroom for disciplinary reasons. Indicator 4A reports the number of LEAs that have had a significant discrepancy and the rate of out-of-school suspensions and expulsions of greater than 10 days in a school year for children with IEPs. Miguel's IEP team created an FBA that identified his needs, and he had a behavior plan that was fully implemented and regularly revised to meet his needs. So his LEA was not found to have significant discrepancy, and this means that his LEA was not removing students with IEPs at an excessively higher rate than the state average for students with IEPs. These interventions are examples of his LEA's strong policies, practices, and procedures, which ultimately resolved the behavioral challenges that he had, and they limited future disciplinary actions for him. Indicator 4B also measures suspension and expulsion, but it's a compliance indicator that the department monitors closely. Each year, the state analyzes discipline data to check if within each LEA, students with IEPs from one particular race or ethnicity group are being suspended or expelled greater than 10 days at a higher rate than students with IEPs from other races or ethnicities. Miguel's LEA was not found to be removing Hispanic students with IEPs at an excessively higher rate than other races and ethnicities with IEPs within his LEA. But if an LEA is found to have significant discrepancy, the state is required to analyze the LEA's data to determine whether the significant discrepancy is the result of policies, procedures, and practices that do not comply with federal requirements related to the development and implementation of IEPs, use of positive behavioral supports, or within the procedural safeguards. And with indicator 4, we drop another flag along the way. Indicator 3 is statewide assessment, and in grades 3 through 8, Miguel participated in the TCAP each year, and then later in end-of-course assessments, or EOCs, throughout his high school career. And annually, his IEP team used data to determine any appropriate accommodations that he might have needed to support him throughout his assessments. And due to strong practices at his LEA, Miguel had access to Tier 1 instruction with his Gen Ed peers, using those high-quality instructional materials that we know are so important to a student's proficiency. With indicator 3, we're able to plant another flag in Miguel's journey to highlight areas where he received additional supports to achieve proficiency on his statewide assessments. And now we'll pass to Catherine to tell you the rest of Miguel's story.
Indicator 13, Secondary Transition with IEP Goals, focuses on the transition planning process for students with disabilities, which begins at age 14 in Tennessee. Miguel's IEP team developed a transition plan that addressed the key components needed to support his measurable post-secondary goals in the areas of education and training and employment. Although not required for the traditional diploma that Miguel is seeking, the IEP team also included aspects of adult independent living in his plan based on his transition assessment results. There are 8 essential components in a secondary transition plan, with measurable post-secondary goals being just one of them. This transition plan helped Miguel explore areas of interest, gain knowledge about those fields, and create actionable steps to prepare for life after high school. It's important to remember this as we continue to go through Miguel's story, as the measurable post-secondary goals he articulated will be a driving force in determining whether he meets his post-school outcomes. On Miguel's timeline, you can see this additional flag that was dropped. Coming up next are Indicator 1, Graduation, and Indicator 2, Dropout, which will assess Miguel's progress towards graduation and the risk of him dropping out. These are critical indicators in determining his overall success in completing high school. In Tennessee, the term graduation can be misleading. Indicator 1 is a reflection of our commitment to high expectations and ensuring students receive the necessary support to earn the highest possible diploma. Therefore, it only includes students who graduate with a traditional diploma. It's important to note that Indicator 1, graduation is not the same as the overall graduation rate. It specifically tracks the number of students who exited high school with a traditional diploma, focusing on the type of diploma received rather than the graduation rate itself. If Miguel had earned an alternate academic diploma, occupational diploma, or special education diploma, he would have been classified as a non-graduate for Indicator 1. On the other hand, Indicator 2 measures the dropout rate while also providing insights into the overall graduation rate. This indicator reflects not only the students who graduated with a traditional diploma, but also includes those who may receive non-traditional diplomas, such as the alternate academic or occupational diploma. This broader perspective allows for a comprehensive understanding of the educational landscape and highlights areas where students, particularly those with disabilities, may need additional support to stay engaged and complete their education successfully. When Miguel exited high school, he was recorded as a student who graduated with a traditional high school diploma. This outcome is a positive reflection of the efforts made by his IEP team and the support he received throughout his educational journey. As we continue to track Miguel's educational journey, you can see those two additional flags appear, highlighting key moments related to Indicator 1, graduation, and Indicator 2, dropout. These flags mark important milestones in evaluating his progress toward completing high school and the risk of disengagement along the way. As we look ahead to Indicator 14, I'm sure you all are well acquainted with its significance, particularly since we just wrapped up our post-school outcomes survey across the state. This indicator includes the follow-up process that occurs 1 year after a student exits high school. In Miguel's case, his teacher reached out to check if he was involved in employment, training, or post-secondary education. During this follow-up, the teacher administered the post-school outcomes survey, which gathers information on the activities of former students after graduation. Miguel reported that he was enrolled in classes at a local community college, reflecting his ongoing commitment to education and training. This aligns with the measurable post-secondary goals that Miguel articulated during high school, emphasizing his goals for continued education and professional learning. The successful attainment of his measurable post-secondary goals not only showcases the effectiveness of his transition planning, but also serves as a critical indicator of his post-school outcomes, reinforcing the importance of setting clear goals and the support needed to achieve them. This flag highlights not only Miguel's transition from high school, but also his continued educational pursuits, showing that he is taking steps toward achieving his long-term goals. Tracking this progress is essential for assessing the effectiveness of transition planning and support, and it reinforces the importance of ongoing monitoring for students with disabilities after they exit high school. Indicator 15, resolution sessions, and Indicator 16, mediation, pertains to the procedural safeguards for dispute resolution that Miguel's parents have under IDEA. These rights empower parents to seek mediation or file a due process complaint when disagreements arise regarding their child's education. A resolution session is a part of this due process complaint process, allowing parents and schools to discuss and attempt to resolve issues before escalating to formal proceedings. It's important to note that not all parents will choose to pursue resolution sessions or mediation, so these indicators are considered optional on the timeline. This means that while they are available as resources for parents, their occurrence may vary based on individual situations and the specific needs of the families involved. This flag is reflected in the timeline but is considered optional, as it may not apply to all students. While Indicator 15, resolution sessions, and Indicator 16, mediation, provide important procedural safeguards for families, not all parents will choose to engage in these processes. Thus, their inclusion in the timeline serves to highlight the available supports without implying that every student will require or utilize them. By organizing the indicators in a timeline, stakeholders can better understand how they are interconnected and identify key areas where they impact different stages of a child's educational journey. The decisions made by parents, teachers, and LEAs for each child directly influence the SPP and APR indicators. The data collected through the SPP and APR informs the federal government about Tennessee's compliance with IDA requirements. This data can also serve as leverage for improving outcomes for children with disabilities. It's essential that this data tells a meaningful story for each child, highlighting connections and inspiring change. Most importantly, we must keep the end goal in mind. The future success of our students with disabilities often hinges on the decisions made during early childhood transition, preschool, and kindergarten. The initial IEP team placement decisions and LEA programming priorities significantly shape the data collected, which ultimately affects student success. These indicators reflect real students and real data, and we have the responsibility to identify these critical points of support, planting flags that mark their progress along the way. It's important to look ahead, as early interventions significantly impact the success rates of indicators 1, 2, 13, and 14. Miguel's success was due to early access to necessary resources. As we've discussed, reviewing your APR is essential for monitoring the health of your system. If Miguel's team had waited for the results of indicators 13 and 14, it would have been too late. Instead, by continuously reviewing the APR, his path was adjusted, leading to a more meaningful life and stronger outcomes. As a parent of a preschooler who will start kindergarten next year, I find myself considering her educational journey with the end in mind and planning for her future. Is your district reflecting on the past while planning for the future? At the state level, we certainly cannot achieve this on our own. And SPED directors can't do it alone either. It is the decisions made by the IEP teams that drive performance. We need to be proactive early and consider the graduation rate for every preschooler, every kindergartner. At the end of each student's educational journey, what do you want their post-secondary outcomes to reflect? Integrated support from early education through high school is crucial for ensuring post-secondary success. Decisions made throughout a student's educational journey, not just during transition planning, significantly impact their future outcomes. A focus on holistic development, which includes academic, vocational, and life skills, is essential from an early age. Encouraging self-advocacy and independence further supports this development. Collaboration is key. Engaging families, educators, and community partners early on helps create a cohesive support network that adapts to the student's evolving needs. Early decisions matter greatly, as early interventions, consistent support, and proactive planning lead to improved post-secondary outcomes and smoother transitions into adulthood. APR indicators are vital benchmarks that illuminate the path of a child's educational journey. These indicators measure various aspects of a child's progress and the effectiveness of the programs they participate in. By continuously monitoring these indicators, we gain a clear understanding of where a child is and where they need to go. This clarity allows educators and IEP teams to make well-informed decisions tailored to each child's unique needs and potential. Guided by these benchmarks, we can ensure that every decision made propels the child toward a future filled with opportunities for higher education, meaningful employment, and personal success. Ultimately, consistent tracking and responsive actions based on APR indicators support the child's overall development, helping them achieve their full potential and leading a fulfilling life.
Thanks, Catherine. So as we wrap up today, we know data can be very complicated. Staring at a spreadsheet or a matrix, how do you make sense of it all to drive your LEA planning and for your decision making? Data needs to communicate a story. It needs to be compelling, visual, digestible, and inspiring. We need to make connections and inspire change. So as we connect Miguel's story to children in our LEAs and our schools, let's think for a moment on how we can inspire those changes that are needed to increase APR performance and improve outcomes for those very real children that we serve. Let's ask ourselves these questions. We know that to use data effectively, we need to access it, understand it, be able to communicate it to stakeholders, and use data to inspire improvement within our systems. The last question here is the important one. Are you using the APR data to progress monitor the health of your individual special education system? How will you get there? Is your special education system designed to drive improved results for students with disabilities? Does your APR matrix reflect your priorities in the LEA in improving the outcomes? Are you using your APR data and other data sources all throughout the year to drive the work? In closing, we encourage you to look for the story found within your data, make those connections, and inspire change in your district that is focused on increasing APR performance and, most importantly, improving outcomes for our students. Catherine, I thank you so much for joining us today. We've provided some important resources on the next slide and our contact information. Please reach out with any questions or support needs that you may have. We've included some important APR resources here for you. The first item is the actual Department Special Education Data webpage. And if you proceed through that page, you will click on the APR Resources tab. There you will find important APR resources to review with your teams to ensure we are entering those data with fidelity across the state. Also, the content experts for each indicator area are listed as well for programming help. Thank you again for joining us today. We ask that you please take just a moment to complete a short survey for us using the QR code provided here. The survey responses will help inform and improve our future sessions. Thank you in advance for sharing this important feedback with our team, and we are here to support you. Please reach out to us with any questions. Thank you.